Who do you support?
I am originally from Leicester, and I do support Leicester City, and I supported them before we won the league. Um, my mum's actually here from England at the moment, and we all watched the game, watched us lose 2-0 to Palace
The
at 6 o'clock
Palace.
this morning. What a
Aim is good.
glorious way to start your day.
I'm a Palace fan, albeit
What?
pretty loosely. Cam and I are far closer followers of the A League, but I do follow Crystal Palace in the Premier League. So I got the notifications for that as I woke up this morning. I was like, sweet.
Well done. It was you. It was a very Palace win. But yeah, anyway, fun times. Well, congratulations, Palace. Good to good to I think it's a humbling experience. Football. Anyway, I was saying that you can't. I can't even watch a football game now without like checking your phone and checking Twitter and all the. I used to just be able to sit there and watch it, and it's the same with like listening to music, and that's why the vinyl. Is it a vinyl resurgence? I don't know, but I think that like connecting with music via the medium of vinyl, I think is the best way of connecting with it.
Yeah, it's interesting because for Christmas, I got 6 vinyls I just asked for vinyls effectively. Because I recently, for my birthday, my wife got me a Teenage Dad's vinyl and I put it on, and that was sort of my first experience of having a vinyl of my own of music that I liked and putting it on. My dad had done it and I'd done it with him as a kid, and then, my wife's got vinyls that she likes too, and I was like, hey, I'm going to put it on, and then actually just sitting on the couch, having a coffee of a morning, listening to the music. I would have never done that if I just opened up Spotify, connected it to the speaker, and so I can certainly understand what you're talking about, that physical connection to music. Really, it's not just a different experience of putting on the needle and placing it, it's also a different listening experience for that reason too.
Yeah, look, it's a different listening experience. It's a better way of kind of connecting with the artist. It's a way of kind of slowing down and just being present with yourself and the thing that that you want to be with, and therefore that makes a big difference. Again, it's not just background noise. Are we recording, by the way? Have we started?
Yeah, we
Yes.
are. We're all good.
All right, okay, cool. Yeah, because I think there's a lot that there's so much around the kind of deep connection that we often miss in modern day society. It's the same actually even around like having a coffee. I actually got this from a book by John Kerwin called like All Blacks Don't Cry. I think I bought it in Auckland Airport like 10, 15 years ago. And I'm one of those people, I get really antsy if I don't sit down and have a coffee. But sit down and have a coffee. I don't do takeaways. I don't do any of that. It's like sit there and appreciate that these things were like beans that were grown in Guatemala or Ethiopia, and then they've been roasted by someone so they can taste in a certain way, and they've been poured over this hot water, and then there's a cow has like given you the milk, and they've put that milk over these roasted beans that have come from the other side of the world, and you paid $4 for it. And let's just sit there and appreciate that absolutely amazing thing that you're doing. So I think being able to do that every morning is a really important thing, and being able to see music as this wondrous experience. I think, again, there, Cam, like you talked about as a kid that you connected with. I had exactly the same thing. Like I can remember, my dad's Beatles collection, which is just over there. Like he had first pressings of everything, right? Like a mad, keen, super fan back in the day. And it was his most valuable things. It's my most valuable possessions. And they still play perfectly. They're in great condition, and it is about having that kind of deep connection to the music, but also that deep connection to that time that you had with that person. But also now I've got that physical reminder. I don't need everything else, but I've got this kind of physical reminder of like our connection, and it kind of lives on through the music and through the message that it provides and the feeling that I have inside. So all of these different things provide us with a map of kind of who we are. Sorry, I don't want to get too cosmic. I know it's like 7 o'clock. But I think they provide a map of who we are. And again, like having been very fortunate to work for a very successful company at Apple, and, seen the amazing thing that happens and all the great things that you can do with this wonderful pocket supercomputer that you have in your pocket. Most people just use it to get distracted, and that's okay because we're human beings and we're like that. What's important about music is that we can use it to really dig deep in ourselves, understand who we are, be present, and appreciate the wonder of, again, the fact that maybe somebody in a room somewhere produced a sound and a feeling or a song, or they managed to put it down on tape, and it's something that you can be affected by, and that you can then have that, and it's somehow magically compressed into a piece of plastic, and we still don't really quite understand why, and we can carry it around with us, and that you can give it to your kids too. That's a pretty cool thing. So anyway, that's how I feel about it all.
It really is, and I found myself like super fascinated, and I suppose I'll preface this by saying that streaming and vinyl are of course not mutually exclusive things, but fascinating in your background as you spent more than a decade or so leading at least the Australian arm, or in a leadership position in Apple Music, which is a streaming behemoth, one of the biggest in the entire world. That's a model of music consumption that is wholly intangible. It's not, it's as far from the physical thing as we could get, and it's the dominant form of music consumption now. And then you've pivoted. You've started Impressed Recordings, which we'll talk a bit about in a bit. But basically, the ethos of the company is around having this vinyl connection, like doing quality vinyl pressings of artists that you like, sending them to people, having accompanying essays. It's so physical. So how did your background with Apple Music go on to inform what you've done with Impressed Recordings? And do you see similarities, differences, synergies between the two times? Or I'm just really interested in how those two worlds of yours collide or don't collide.
Yeah, sure. The first thing is that like Apple's an amazing place to learn, because, you know, it's the most successful company in the world in the history of the stock market. So, you know, you're going to meet a lot of smart people and be fortunate enough to do that and learn some really great ideas. For me, the best learning that I took from it is about how the product and the customer focus is really, really, really important. So again, that Apple has this, you know, deep focus on product, something that I'd never experienced before until I got there, and it's just absolutely incredible. And that is something that I think, when applied to music and when applied to a physical media product such as vinyl, is really, you know, has a lot of value. So again, for me, it was about using that lens, on a perfectionist lens on product, and then applying it to making vinyl, and how could vinyl be better? How could the vinyl customer experience be better? That was really, really important to me. So again, like, you know, can it be numbered? Can it be can it be individualized? Can it be super high audio quality? Can it be arrive in one piece? If it doesn't arrive in one piece, how do we deal with that? All of these things which, and again, it's not to kind of bag out other kind of D2C retailers or things like that, but that it can often be, as someone who buys a lot of records, it can often be delivered late or poorly, or all of those kind of things. So don't get me wrong, we get things wrong all the time, but we use those as learning experiences, and we work really closely with our customers and the community that we've been fortunate to build over a really small period of time to see how we can make things better. And I think that focus on product and on customer is what I really learned from Apple. In terms of kind of why the pivot, I think, if I'm going to be honest, I didn't believe it anymore. And you can kind of see that with what's happening with streaming services. I don't think it's fair to kind of just label Apple, put Apple in one box. It's all the streaming services. But again, I think streaming is an incredible discovery tool. It's incredible for lots of different artists in lots of different ways. Is it how I want to consume music myself? No. Do I believe that other people are like me? Yes. And do I believe that, like yourself, Cam, for example, that example you gave, people want to have a deeper connection to the music? Yes. And so that was very much the reason for pivoting. Again, I think also being upfront, like playlist stuffing, AI, all of that stuff, that's not stuff that I agree with. And I think obviously also, through what has happened with Spotify and their overall success, it's obvious across all streaming platforms that there is less reliance on editorial curation, and that, again, there is a gap there to fill. You're not going to be able to fill it to all customers by offering them, a $50 vinyl record. But the idea that you can have a more curated experience than you actually do get on those streaming services these days is really, really important. The kind of final part, which I think is worth talking about, is about Australian music. I know how passionate you guys are about that, and Australians have on streaming services the lowest amount of listening to their local music in the world.
Globally.
Yeah.
I wish that was a surprise.
But it's not, right?
Yeah, like, you're obviously, a little bit aware of how, obviously you said we're passionate, and we are, and we talk so much just about the disconnect, I think, between Australian music and the broader community, and there's so many factors into play, like less Australian music on commercial radio, and obviously Spotify and playlistings and that sort of stuff has an effect as well. But I'm also curious because obviously you don't have any of the algorithms or the AI that Spotify are pushing and Apple Music and all the other services are now implementing. You mentioned that is obviously a great exposure tool for a lot of artists. So when you're speaking to artists, are they, the physical copy of vinyl, obviously it's had a bit of a comeback in the last 5 or so years. Are they hesitant to fully commit to anything like, let's go all down the vinyl route? Or like, what are the sort of conversations and the feelings, I guess, with the artists that you're speaking to, and where are they placed when it comes to all the algorithms and AI features?
Look, I think it depends. And there's lots of people who are, who I am friends with, who I love, and lots of artists who I love and respect, who, play that game really well. And I think that it's important to do it. Like, Impressed, has, we do digital distribution, and we work with Spotify, and we work with Apple, and, we put things up for pitching and all of those things as well. So, that's okay.
To, right?
Huh?
You almost have to, right? Like, it's become such a big beast that if you ignore it, you just not irrelevant, but you're not really in the picture.
Yeah, I know, and so look, it's not saying it's going to go away. I'm not, I'm originally from Leicestershire. It's the home of Luddism, which you guys might have heard of. Like, people call each other a Luddite. They were the people from Shepshed in Leicestershire who went and smashed the machines during the Industrial Revolution. I'm not like a Luddite who's like going, smash your phones, don't ever listen to Spotify, it's all terrible. Like, of course, it's amazing that you've got the whole history of recorded music in your pocket, right? That's great. But, like, I think there's a few things. One, let's have a deeper connected experience to yourself and the music that hopefully moves you. Two, let's directly put a bit of money into the artist's pocket that you're, that you're supporting and that you want to be able to achieve. 3, let's make some lasting memories, and let's be able to dig deeper and connect deeply to the physical copy, which you're going to get a lot more out of. And then, again, as part of that, is that something that you can then pass on to further generations? Is that something you can gift? All of those different kind of things. So I'm not saying smash it up and do all that. And again, there's part of it where I need Spotify. That's great. And I need Apple, and the people who work there are amazing. But I think it's important that we recognize, like anything, how it has changed culture, and that we recognize that it may not be for the better, particularly in an English-speaking country that is a long way away from America. And this isn't just an Australian problem. This is a problem in the UK, which is obviously another place that's really close to my heart. It's a problem in Ireland. It's a problem in other, in lots of other, places around the world, where what happens is, because of the algorithm, is that the customer just gets served things that they would like more of, right? And then the chances are, because of the way of globalization and the way where these places are headquartered and where the most amount of music comes from, and where the major labels are based, and all of that is fine, you're going to get American music. And I think it's really important to be able to connect, as you guys do, with local culture, with local musicians, to be able to support them. And again, I'm not a Luddite. I'm also not a flag-waving patriot. I'm a citizen of Australia. I'm very proudly a citizen of Australia after all these years, and a citizen of the UK. And but having a local culture is really desperately important. I don't want my kids to grow up in a world where they can't go and see local bands. I don't want them to grow up in a world where those things aren't important and that they can't necessarily mean something and also contribute to it. That stuff for me is really important, and that's stuff that I'm passionate about. And so, yeah, there's a few things. Anyway, I didn't even answer your question. The question that you asked me was about where the artist's feeling about it, and the answer is that some artists absolutely love vinyl and they really want to do it, and they want to do it because it's again that deeper connection with their fans. Some artists and managers want to do it because they've got a better chance of charting. That's great too.
Interesting.
I was head of marketing at Universal Music for domestic artists, and if we want to play the chart game, we can play the chart game. You know, we managed to get Surf Trash, a band we love from Lake Macquarie. We managed to get them #1 Australian album out of nowhere, because they sold a lot of records that week, and they did an amazing job. And the band were worth it, and they did an awesome job, and I'm so proud of them, and hopefully it gives them a leg up in their career too. Some artists, there's a particularly kind of older artists, and I noticed that the Dirty Three did it. Lo Carmen, who we did, who's an incredible artist, maybe a slightly older demographic. They're happy to do vinyl first, and then do streaming. And I think that's important because they know that streaming is probably they're less likely to be worried about getting discovered at this stage of their career. So there's all these different reasons that happen, and there's all these different reasons that artists have for doing it. And some artists just want to be really super creative and go, hey, I've got this idea, and it's got to look like this, and it's got to be this color vinyl, or it's got to be this. And some artists just like the challenge, or they they love having a meeting with me, who, as you can see, can get really passionate about this kind of stuff and go, and I'm like, yeah, right, about we do this and we do that. And then sometimes really cool things happen, and we manage to make them, and they become these things in the world, and people buy them, and that makes everyone feel kind of warm and fuzzy, and then that's it. There you go.
Yeah, I'm interested in, you spoke of the product focus, the concept of which you were inspired by working at Apple, and scrolling through your website, it felt that way. It feels like this is a website and a service created, or a label created by music lovers and purists, and artists are clearly on board, and artists are, for example, well remunerated for their input to that, and then the music purists can go, and it just felt like a home for those kind of things, whereas other places and other things can feel more like a transaction. This is a place where you go to do a transaction, whereas your website felt quite different. So, I mean, is that clearly from your passion, that is kind of a central ethos to Impress, but when you were setting up Impress, was that kind of the driving force into make something for the pure love of it, and make it so good that it's going to be success commercially?
Yeah, 100%. That was it, and it's really, really hard to do that. It's really risky. There's a few kind of things that really influenced me in terms of my thinking, and I'm really grateful that other people kind of backed me and came along with that journey, and we seem to be doing really great. We've done a really good job so far. The idea was to be artist friendly, as artist friendly as we possibly could without being ridiculous. But I think that's really, really important. That's something that people say. Anyway, I think it's just being artist friendly is the first thing, right? Giving the artists a home is really, really important. Being able to be relevant culturally and being able to make things that people love, all of those things, I think that's just what a business should aspire to. And you might never ever hit it, but I think that it's worth perfecting or trying to perfect your craft and making it relevant to a local community. And again, it's just I don't believe really in transactional. I think that that's a kind of finite thinking. I think that if we can all think bigger about the idea around Impressed, is about how can we raise all boats, right? How can the artists win? How can other labels win? How can we do a great service for other labels? And I'd like to think that we do at times. And so we've signed deals with other labels where we do their vinyl for them and do D2C for them, and hopefully we do a great job for them. It's how can customers win, and how can vinyl lovers win, and how can people who are just discovering vinyl and music lovers, how can they win too, and how can they have a great experience? So I think rather than like, hey, we're going to make something that people want to buy, it's like, let's make something that is going to really kind of raise all boats, and that's the goal. We're not always going to hit it. It's not always going to happen. We're going to screw up. We have screwed up, but we're going to use those as learning opportunities. And if we screw up with certain artists or with certain artist fan base, we're going to hold our hand up. And I've had to do that at least once and just write them an email and go, I'm just so sorry. You haven't had your thing. You haven't had your record. You got the wrong record. All these things happen, but we have to aspire for better. And for me, aspiring for better was around making records in Australia. That was it.
And people love that though. Like, I mean, maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but when a company or anybody or anybody comes out and goes, look, we stuffed this one up. Like, that's on us, but we're going to fix it. And it's like that. We've moved into the era of this like politician style response from everything, well outside of politics, that people are unwilling to, or the PR machine means that they have to frame it in a different way. But as a company, to just come out and go, hey, look, we didn't get this one right, and we're going to get it right in the future. I think people really, really appreciate that honesty from people, that legitimate, relatability, but we don't see anywhere near enough of it. Did you find in those instances where you did have a response like that after an error, that you got a response from those people, those fans, those artists that reflected it?
Yeah. I'll talk about it, and so all you horror show fans out there who are like, my God, it's all your fault, Luke. I didn't get my vinyl in time. We had we had a lot of learning experiences on that project, and Nick, it was really we didn't do a great job for Nick, and we should have done a lot better. And I told him that, and but we've shook hands on it and said, look, we learned a lot there, and that's okay. And hopefully we've done the same with all of his, with his fans who we've let down, not all of them. And that's okay. We've learned, he's learned, and hopefully those fans will go, you know what, like, I really loved that record, and, it was out on Impressed, and Impressed didn't do a great job in terms of delivering it to me at the time that I wanted, but they fessed up and they admitted it. So there you go.
Yeah, and it's one of those, as I was saying, it's not a political answer. It's just a very genuine, hey, look, we stuffed up and we can only apologize. We'll, look to do better, etc., etc. And the way you're talking about, I always get the metaphor wrong, but all ships are rising with the tide, right? It almost feels like the original, like, idea around capitalism as opposed to what it's now become. And the original idea obviously is, I'm a butcher, I want people to buy more of my meat, so I've got to make the best meat possible so they come to me. I'm a baker, I've got to make the best bread possible to make sure that people come and buy my bread and not someone else's. And then us, the consumer, we get the best sandwich because the best possible products are being created. Until someone changed that, I think it was the 70s or 80s or around there somewhere, when they've gone, hang on, let's just maximize profits and reduce costs. And that's now the method we're in. And, that feels like the streaming world is, that's very much what they're, we know artists get paid absolutely nothing. Where, your method and your approach to it feels like, the old school, the original capitalism way, where it's, we're trying to produce the best product possible, then everyone can win as a result.
Look, exactly that. It's like, it's kind of an artisanal approach. It's that same thing. But we're fortunate enough, right? And again, I think that's one of the things in terms of, when we're not greedy, but we think we can do a great job. Like, we're very fortunate right now. We've got so many records. I think we could probably already, without knowing what else is coming around the corner, like 2 weeks into the year, we could probably put out 2 records a week. And, you know, we're not going to be able to do that, but we can kind of scale it if we get it right to being able to put out more records that more people love. And like, I think that if we do that in the correct way, then that's a really, really awesome thing. And that's again, like, that's why distribution companies and record companies were all set up in the first place. It's because, again, it's about like making great music. It's also not about being competitive. I think that's one thing that I learned a lot of at Universal. And again, I think I have so much respect for a lot of the people who work there, including Lucian, who is just an amazing businessman in lots of different ways. But that's not really how I want to do business. And I think that I don't necessarily want to win. I just want to help everybody win. And I think that if we help everybody win and we make a great product for everybody, regardless of what label that you're on, or whether you're signed directly to Impressed, or whether it's just a license, or, you know, whatever it is that we're just doing a favor, or we're helping people out, or all of these different things, I just want them to have a great experience and the customer to have a great experience. And if we do that, then again, everybody wins. It's not about being first. I think that's the thing as well. That's a different... It's not about beating anybody. It's not about being number one. Like, I think if we do a good job and make great things, we have a business model that's flexible to work with anybody or any artist that we love, and we respect their music of whatever genre. And that for me is really, really exciting. So it's just different framing. I agree.
And tell us about coloured vinyls. That's now obviously becoming a big trend. And we spoke to Montaigne about this as well, because they were discussing whether to go, you know, black, traditional black, or whether to have coloured options, but the coloured options are so much more expensive. But, you know, it's a lot more appealing to a younger demographic, and it's, you know, it's pretty, and it's something that you can actually put on display as well, as opposed to just playing a vinyl and then putting it back in its case. And then, you know, there's different options there. So how do you see that trend and the way that that's evolved?
Look, I'll just talk personally. I love it. I absolutely love it. Do you know why? Because it's an extra level of creativity around the product that you get. So I think for me, you know, one of the things that I love, like literally the best part of, like, it probably happens like once a week, is when we have the meeting with the artist or the manager, and I'm like, okay, well, here's the thing. I'd really love this to be Coke bottle green with a black splatter and a yellow obi strip. And I'm always, every time I get so nervous. Probably shouldn't say this in public, but I still do, which is great because it's great because I'm a fan, right? Like, I'm 47, but like I channel my inner 16-year-old, and I'm just like, well, got a pitch to the artist or no? And I'm like, yeah, well, because it's there, like, they've put in, like, you know, years of this. These are like their songs. They're like, they poured their life and soul into it, and then they've got like some goon they've never met before, British guy with long hair, going, oh yeah, it's going to be this colour. Like, I don't want that. Like, I just be like, okay, well, what if we did this? And what's amazing is that loads of people just go, yeah, that sounds so cool. Like, I love it. And I also love it when people have come in and they've got really specific ideas around what they want. But I really love it. I just think it adds to the, look, from a Apple / you know, capitalist lens, it adds to the customer experience. I love the idea around, one of the things that we do with Impressed is around scarcity. So one of the things that we wanted to do is to turn a negative into a positive from a business perspective, right? So I'm from England, and I used to buy like so many records and CDs, and they'd be like numbered, and I'd be like, oh wow, like 15,000 of these REM 7-inches, oh, limited edition, I'd definitely buy it. And like, get here, and like, people are like, oh yeah, well, I'm just gonna do the run of 200. And I was like, what? 200? Like, I'm just gonna buy one of those. It's like gonna be worth millions. And there's also that, like, kind of like, I'm a super fan because I like got a really limited thing. And so I think rather than like people here being worried that they weren't making they were making little runs and not making a lot of money, I was like, let's celebrate the scarcity and the craftsmanship of the Australian pressing. Let's differentiate it. We venerate the limited versions that we get from Japan. So let's venerate ourselves. Let's say, hey, like, well, we're doing a really small batch run here in Australia. Let's get behind it. And I think that's one of the things that's really, really working. So again, like now being able to do that for, international artists, that's been really exciting to be able to do that on the level for big artists like, Chet Faker, Sophie, Ryan Adams, where we're doing kind of 200 runs of like these records that have got these huge international fan bases. So cool. I don't know, I just think that's so cool. And like, again, it's like, hey, I'm like an Australian fan and I like get the super limited stuff. Like, whoa, that's cool. Like, so the idea behind that was also around like, let's get the vinyl lovers of Australia, so the people who want to discover music through vinyl, let's get them excited about the scarcity here rather than, again, I know this because I know a lot of different like music nerds, right? And then like, oh, I've got to spend $120 on getting my like Ezra Collective import from the UK. Like, there's a lot of that. And it's like, no, let's try and press it here and we'll just do a super limited run and like that'll be super cool. And the other thing we do, which is great, is that we help out artists, international artists who are touring. So we did UB40, which was really weird because I grew up listening to UB40 when I was like a kid and like I was in the Midlands of England. Like UB40 were like mega stars, right? Like huge. And like a little bit older for me, but like still like huge. And I got an email from UB40, hey mate, can you make our tour stock and da-da-da, and can you send this and da-da-da? It's like, well, within a year, like, yeah, of course, like, we're privileged. And so there's also a greed element from it. There's also a convenience element for the international artists. We can make the stock here. They don't have to ship it around. We'll make it here, make a super limited run. Like, it's all done, like, happy days, and they don't have to follow it around. It doesn't have to worry about it. They don't have to worry about shipping and taxes, and we help out that. And then it helps the fan base here locally too.
It's awesome. And just for like our listeners and my own curiosity, though, I have had a flick through the website, so I feel like I have some degree of understanding. But let's say I spotted a Miami Horror record on your site. Love Miami Horror. So using them as an example, how does the process work from your first meeting with Miami Horror to me, Eamon, receiving it in my hands? Because I know you mentioned before the OBI, which I think is a really interesting component of it as well. So I know there's variables in terms of international artists or package sets or anything, but just say one pressing or one record. How does that process go on your end and for the artist?
Sure, yeah. So, really simply, I'm very fortunate to have met a lot of great humans in around not only the Australian but international music industry. And so, some people have been amazingly supportive. Network, who work with Miami Horror, are one of those teams, one of those labels. Obviously they're concentrating on their streaming as their primary, thing that they need to do to help the artists, Miami Horror, put their new record out, for example. And so for us, what we would do is that, it makes sense for us. I've been a fan of their music for a long time. It's their first album in 9 years. What a privilege. They're like, hey, do you want to put the Miami Horror album out on vinyl? We're like, yeah, great. We'll give it a listen. Sweet. It sounds great. Like, then it's a conversation, and it's then obviously we have contracts and blah, blah, blah. We standard things that we all make work. And then it's like, we're always getting into the creative. Again, like we saw the album cover really quickly. Again, it was a really easy conversation. Hey, let's do purple vinyl. Let's do that. Let's keep the run to really limited to 200. When's the release date? How can we make that work? And then we're off and running. And then basically we're working with in that regard, we work with Network to see what they're doing in terms of their marketing and when the record's coming out. We have to deliver the record to basically ourselves about 10 days before, 11, ideally 12 days before it's released. And stock goes to retail. and then the rest of the stock goes to the fulfillment house, and then it ideally arrives with the customer. It's packaged and sent on the Wednesday or the Thursday to arrive on Friday on the day of release. In an ideal world, obviously, Ozpost, all the things, delays, physical media. There's been, customs, all the things that you could ever possibly wish to go wrong. They've all gone wrong. They will all continue to go wrong on a grand scale. It's about how you roll with them and bake in the time to be able to do it.
And how fantastic from that music purist perspective, though, that you could, we understand music releases so differently now, and Cam and I we're kind of tracking and monitoring releases. We know they're often released on Friday. We'll be checking the digital versions, but to have an album anticipation, to know it's coming out, and then to be able to actually receive that physically at the same time or on the same day, if all goes to plan, that it is actually released, and perhaps the first listen you get is physically, but it's no later than you would get digitally. That is a very, very cool concept.
We can't get it delivered for midnight. Like, that's the thing. Like, that's one thing. Like, so 12:01 is like, that's like, again, like, we were able to do that at Apple. Like, that's again, that's like, streaming is amazing for that, right? Like, you can listen to that record at 12:01 and happy days. But like, to be able to have that as a lean back experience, like, you come home from work, the record's there, happy days. That's the goal. Yeah.
Is there any risk, you're saying you're sort of getting it shipped out sort of Wednesday or Thursday, hopefully arriving to the person on a Friday? Is there any risk or any ramifications if it arrives on a Thursday before the official release? Or is that just the way it happens, it's just not ever going to happen?
There are. To our friends at Aria, hi. Ideally, if it arrives on the Thursday, it doesn't count to the Aria chart.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Can you just say, hey?
Anyway, Lynn, I love you. Let's talk.
Look, it's not your fault if the postal service is too efficient.
I know. So, as you can imagine, this is stuff we've had very friendly conversations with some of our friends at Aria, but like, it's okay. Look, they've got important things to do. Not really worry about whether, Luke's vinyl gets there a little bit early. That's okay.
I'm also, you've obviously mentioned Apple. You spent over 11 years at Apple Music. Because when you have an actual record, right, it's not just, your physical connection to it, but it's also you physically own it. Right, where you never know digitally where that music's going to end up in 10, 5 years' time, whatever. If you lose access to your Spotify account, you lose access to all of that music. Where with a vinyl record, you've got it physically. And you might actually be the person that I have this gripe with. I don't know whether it's you or whether it's someone, but I remember it would have been 2015, 2016. I've still told the story on the podcast, but I had an iPhone. Apple Music, well, it was iTunes. It switched to the Apple Music streaming service, and I lost my entire iTunes library. I was filthy. I was gutted. I sold my iPhone. I bought a Samsung, and I installed Spotify. And I've got an iPhone again since, and doing this on a MacBook Pro, so I'm not off Apple. But in principle, I sold the iPhone and got a Samsung because I lost my entire iTunes library. So I'm not saying you had anything to do with that, but I don't know, maybe you were involved in some way or another. But that is what I'm talking about with having a physical copy of a vinyl. That can't just disappear overnight because someone decided to shift policies of their business or, whatever the case is.
Look, I think, Cam, you've just nailed one of the. I'm so sorry that happened to you. No, I am, mate. It's awful. Have you read a book? There's a great book called Choke Point Capitalism. Have a read of that. It's the same. Yeah, like they argue a lot about that. Again, I didn't realise that we were all going to get nicely philosophical on a Thursday evening, but it's all good. I'm here for it, man. Like, it's all good. I think, and Joe from SydneyMusic.net, I don't know, he wrote a great article about all this. Again, how, you can lose all your physical media. I really regret, I moved house 3 years ago. I just gave away all my DVDs. What was I doing? how's it doing? Like, I've got, I'm like, oh yeah, I want to watch whatever, blah, blah, blah. Like, oh, well, I've not got a copy of it anymore. Oh, I've got to subscribe to something. Huh.
Yeah, I
All of that is
wonder-
it's rubbish.
if there's a component with the DVD or the VHS, like a quality component, where it feels like you listen to a vinyl record pressed in the 70s, it still holds up in today's, digital world of making music, and it's quite even. Where a DVD, then you have the Blu-rays, and then they got the 4K ultras, and everything will be in 8K. Well, there is 8K; it's just not widely adapted yet, but. I wonder if, throwing at your DVDs, you're not going to regret it as much because of the quality difference that you can find today, where, as I made before, the vinyls, I feel like are quite comparable to what you get today.
I think one of the reasons why, like, the vinyl in Australia, and I don't know whether you guys have got, like, some kind of, like, again, it's always worth going, get to your Vinnies, there's some glorious stuff in there, it's, like, amazing. Even like on Discogs you can buy, for example, like I bought some, like, great 70s like Bob Marley or McCartney or Yes records, like in Australia for like $10, and they're all like really flimsy, like they're all like super, like they're almost like flexi disc, but such great quality, such, you can buy them secondhand for like $10, and I don't know, like it's just, again, it's a story I quite like. I've got bought a brilliant copy of a Van Morrison record, again, which had the cover ripped off and someone had drawn it for $5, but the pressing was immaculate. I was like, this is magic. Like, again, like, what a great story. I'd much rather have that. I think, look, I'm not saying the apocalypse is coming, because hopefully it isn't, but like, I think it's just important to have physical media that you're really attached to. I've managed to get rid of a lot of the DVDs, and I used to have a lot of books. I mean, like House and Countries and all this kind of stuff. I used to carry my books and all my CDs. I used to have 5,000 CDs as well as all my vinyl.
Wow.
And I've given them away or got rid of them at various points. And there's a part of me where I do regret it a little bit, because, again, they are my memories, and I can't get them back now without giving somebody more money for it. So, yeah, I think, look, a vinyl collection is great quality. It's just, again, it tells a story about who you are. It makes you more present. Again, if it's second hand, obviously, you're upcycling effectively anyway. So, happy days. And also, if you're buying an Australian pressing that's pressed in Australia, particularly of an international artist that's pressed in Australia, it's significantly better for the environment, because most of the carbon offset or carbon footprint that comes from making vinyl records isn't from the fact that you have a piece of plastic. It's from the ability of people to be able to fly it around the planet.
My mother-in-law did a similar thing. She got rid of her vinyl collection, again, moving homes, and it was probably, I know, only a few years before, I guess, the vinyl revival, if you will, was quite strong. And she regrets just throwing out her whole catalogue of vinyls. But we're talking about the quality of them as well. Olivia Rodrigo had a Zoetrope vinyl.
Zoetrope.
Yeah. But I was reading, because my wife for Christmas said, I want that edition because it looks really cool that's spinning around. But I was reading, people were saying the sound quality is not as good as a traditional vinyl.
Yeah.
Can you, layman's term, explain why that might be?
Okay, so traditionally, picture discs were terrible quality. I bought, it's probably worth a bit of money, actually, like the Manic Street Preachers' Holy Bible, one of the best albums of all time, by the way, people, 1994. Amazing record. I've got that on picture disc. Sounds terrible, awful, and the quality used to be just really, really, really bad. The quality is getting better on a lot of picture discs now, basically because they're really popular, because they're very Instagrammable and TikTokable, and that's okay. And for my sins, audiophiles listening out there who may have bought records from us, today I discussed making Impressed's first Zoetrope picture disc, and the artist signed off on it.
There you go.
So yeah, we've signed off on doing one of these.
Australian artist?
Can't tell you.
Without,
can't tell you.
Okay, I was going to say,
it is an Australian artist. There you go. Yeah, it's going to be a very different. It's going to be a very interesting thing. Anyway, I can't wait for this to come to life.
Let's not breach any NDOs, but thank
Oh,
you.
that's it's not like it's just I'm more. This will be a good one. I'm really proud of it. So yeah, look, the quality can be at times not great. I had concerns about doing a picture disc. We've done our first picture disc with Birds of Tokyo. Thank you, Birds of Tokyo, and your legend of a manager. Birds wanted a picture disc. We're not going to argue with them. They said we want a picture disc. We're making a picture disc. It's our first picture disc. The test pressing sounds good, and we're excited to hear it. So
Very good.
they arrive in the country next week. Exciting.
That one potentially, I don't know for sure, but I know they do a lot out of the Grove Studios that here on the Central Coast in Summersby with the team there. So that one potentially recorded here on the Central Coast and
There you
pressed
go.
by yourself.
There you go. Happy days. That's super cool. Yeah, look, the Zoetrope picture disc. There are issues at times with the quality control. Yeah. I think with Olivia, to a certain extent, it's more because they're doing runs of like 10 to 15,000. That's when you're more likely to get things going wrong.
Luke, we know you have a young child to tend to, so we'll let you wrap up in just a moment. But just
Can you hear her screaming? Is that?
no. Just conscious of your time. But just to wrap up, we could probably end on a philosophical note. We've seen the ebbs and flows and the really interesting direction that music's gone in the digital age, and we're watching this vinyl resurgence at the moment. And I've been like very obsessed with how we consume music and how that's changing our relationship with it. I feel like streaming to a degree has cheapened it, and then physical or maybe more conscious listening even via streaming is bringing us back to how we ideally, in my mind, should consume music. But how do you view music and music consumption going from, say, today onwards, given that you're part of an industry which for many years people thought was bygone and is now actually enjoying a huge resurgence? We're seeing people around the world want that connection and seek it out after having the option of having streaming and every song in the world in their pocket. So when you look down the line, if you can look into your crystal ball, how do you see our music consumption, our relationship with it progressing from this point?
So I think, look, the one thing... okay, so my crystal ball is that more people will be listening to more AI music based on how they feel, and there will be more of it on a plate for people who want to do that. What they probably don't know is that they're already doing it. Like most things with AI, they're already doing it. They're already listening to lo-fi study beats or, whatever, like, chill, or like all of those things that you put, or workout, or all of those kind of, thing. Music is about a feeling, and I'm feeling this, so therefore I want to consume music. I don't consume music, I listen to it. That's one of the first things. It's like, again, like if I'm, I like films, but I don't love films like I love music. But people don't consume films, they watch them. People don't consume football. Well, I mean, they do these days. Like they watch it, And so this is the thing. One of the things, right? This is even your choice of language, and it's often unconscious. We consume a lot of stuff all the time. So more and more, there will be more and more consumption of AI music, whether we know it or not. What there will also be, though, for people who are passionate about music, is there will be more listening to music consciously, and that's what I'm banking on. And that people want to be able to have a connection that's a little deeper than I got a notification on my phone that an artist that I quite like has got an album out, and I listened to the first 3 tracks and then I did something else. And I think that that's important culturally, and I think that that's important for us all. And it's not just about music, it's about everything that we do in our lives.
Yeah,
There you go.
It is a very different experience listening to an album front to back as opposed to skipping through on shuffle. Can you just hit on a playlist and hit shuffle on Spotify and enjoy it?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah?
Of course. Like, again, like this isn't this is just to say that all these things are different, right? But it's the same as, again, it's the same as going into a restaurant, right? Like, again, it's like, that's not saying I don't like, hot chips. Of course I love hot chips. Who doesn't love hot chips?
The more guilty
Love hot chips.
weakness.
Right, but for a good example, well, for me, I don't eat meat unless I know that it was wild caught. Now that sounds like a bit, for want of a British phrase, wanky, but like, again, it's just a conscious choice, right? So I eat kangaroo, but I don't eat a cow. Okay, well, like that's just my choice, and just because I know that cow was, not was put on this planet to basically, be eaten by humans. The kangaroo just bouncing around and someone shot it, right? And again, there's things here, but like, again, we all have, again, I've just watched too many George Harrison documentaries, but I don't want to sound like George Harrison, but we all have choices, and like that's the thing. So we all have choices about how we want to listen to music. We have choices about what it is that we want to eat. We have choices about how we want to spend our time. Our life on this planet is so desperately short. Like, let's all try to make the most of it and like get a lot of enjoyment and joy and hope from it. And if what makes you happy is a little piece of plastic going around that's like going to make you feel incredible, and it's going to make you feel connected to the people that you love and the experiences that you had and the people who've made the music, how good is that?
Well, make the right choices. I think it's a perfect message from that. Such an interesting conversation, Luke, and such an interesting...
On that bombshell, mate, let's all go to the Hare Krishna retreat. I'll see you there.
Mandolin ready. But no, it has been such a fascinating chat, so insightful, and I think I'm just endlessly interested in this topic and how it reflects us and everything that we've spoken about. So, Luke, thank you so much. Impressed Recordings is where people can find your work and the work of many fantastic artists, and it is... I mean, for the music purists, which I assume a lot of our listeners, it is the best way that you can purchase music and engage with artists, particularly from even the environmental credentials that you guys offer as well. There's so much there. So check out Impress Recordings. Luke, thank you so much.
Thanks, fellas. I really appreciate it. And thanks for your passion as well. The world needs more people who are willing to spend their time talking about the things that are really important to them. So thank you.
Thank you. Great
right,
name, by the way. Impress Recording.
Huh?
Great name, by the way.
I didn't come up with it. Like that was Jono. He helped us out at the start. He came up with it. It came to him in a dream. And you know what? That's great. Happy days.
That's fate. Can't argue with it.